Now, I will compare test results from two zoom lenses, native FEI mount Sony Zeiss 24-70mm lens, with f4 aperture, and Canon 35-105mm FDN lens, with f3.5 aperture. The Canon zoom lens dates from the year 1981, and it belongs to the new FD line of lenses. It is big and heavy and the mechanical construction is not very convincing even though it is made from metal. I am not sure that the lens elements stay concentric at all times. Sony zoom lens is a modern design with optical stabilization and autofocus. In the year 2013, it was one of the first zoom lenses launched for Sony's new mirrorless full-frame cameras. Note that this lens was optimized to utilize computational optics corrections in the camera body, and raw images suffer from vignetting and distortions. The following tests are based on JPEG images corrected by a 7R camera. Canon lens cannot be tested at 24mm focal length, but the Sony lens performs much better than I expected, and according to the measurements, this lens is at its best at f5.6 aperture providing with 28 megapixel resolution in the center. I measured the Sony lens at 34mm focal length, and this lens performs best at f8 aperture with 26 megapixel resolution. To my astonishment, DxOMark measurements claim that the best performance of 15 megapixels happen at f4 aperture, and my measurements give 25 megapixels for the same setting. What can explain this difference? Have I received a better sample of the lens, or does my possibly more recent firmware in A7R work better? At 35mm focal length, Canon zoom performs extremely well in the center, but the corners are a problem. Top left and bottom right corners are poor, but their performance improves somewhat at smaller apertures. At 50mm focal length, the Sony zoom performs excellently both in center and corners with about 24 megapixel resolution. And at 50mm focal length, the Canon is at its weakest, and corner performance is poor up to f11 aperture. At 70mm focal length, the Sony zoom is at its weakest, and both at f5.6 and f8 apertures, the corners are better than the center, that has just 18 megapixel resolution. This is a well-known weakness, and my lens is not a poor sample. At 70mm focal length, Canon's performance stays the same as before, with two very poor corners. At 105mm focal length, I cannot test the Sony lens. Canon has still the two very poor corners, but the center is excellent. Canon's center performance is amazing. But I think that Sony lens is clearly better than this old Canon. By the way, I detected fungus in the Canon lens. And I don't know its role in the weak performance.